Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dexter New Blood. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I love a little bit of a classic rewind where we see Dexter tracking down a clown named Wiggles, and we see him in the classic Dexter outfit. I was like, hey, that's kind of neat. That's got to be really interesting for Michael C. Hall also, like, you know, being back in those clothes specifically, that style, after, you know, and especially in this new show because he doesn't have that signature outfit like that. So it's got to be interesting to kind of be back in that, you know, also like I wonder, maybe I was curious, like how, from a, you know, just production standpoint, how easier, like how do you handle that, like wardrobe wise? Like, was it easier to find that? I mean, it's pretty a basic outfit, so I'm sure it is, but it's also like, I don't know, it's just one of, like, it's one of those things, like, behind the scenes, like, you'd love to know what, like, the cast and crew felt about, like, oh yeah, like, we're kind of going a little classic Dexter in this moment. And obviously him tracking down Wiggles is him explaining everything to Harrison. I even love Deb being there, like, careful. And obviously when he's explaining, like, yeah, when Harry found out, I was like, yeah, I kept it from the family. And Deb's like, fucking A, he did. And he's like, yeah, but it's like, you know, I would never hurt family. And then Deb looks at him like, really? And it's just kind of, and Dexter kind of looks away because it's like, yeah, to be fair, that was not to be fair, but it's a complicated situation with the whole Deb thing, obviously, as we know, but still. So when the time came, I thought it was interesting, and it's like, right. And I love that he's doing, I love too, like, it is fourth wall breaking, because he's like, the guy's like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, they always say some shit like that. I'm like, I love, like, looking to the camera and everything, like hamming it up a little bit. And you can tell Dexter's excited, and I love that that's a through line throughout the entire episode. You've never seen Dexter this happy, because it's like, he gets to share everything with his son. It's like, I get to be open, I don't have to feel bad anymore, I'm open and honest with my son. In fact, it's kind of what I brought up earlier in the season, the moment he found out the razor blade. Now, once again, that could be me misremembering, but at the time, when he found the blade, you could see Deb's kind of like, oh my god, but there was this look on Dexter's face, it almost seemed like he was smiling, but when the recap showed it, it didn't seem like he was smiling. I was like, did I see something that wasn't actually there? Even if it wasn't the case, it definitely shows through this episode, like, he's excited, you know, like, he wanted, you know, Harrison to be like him, because, I mean, to be fair, he never wanted Harrison to be like him. He wanted to keep Harrison away from all of this, but now that Harrison has the dark past, it's just like, well, I might as well teach him everything I know. I mean, Harry helped me in the long run. But like I said, I love that, like, alright, he's about to do his trophy thing, and then Deb stopped him and was like, don't tell him you do your freaking weird, like, trophy thing. And it's like, right, it was a big part of his, you know, his thing. He hasn't done it. I mean, he was going to do it with Matt, but then he was like, no, I'm an evolved monster, I don't need to do that anymore. You know, I mean, granted, he stopped keeping trophies because it ultimately led to him getting found out in the first place. It was enough evidence to kind of draw back to him. So I was like, right, you know, it's just him, his compulsion as a serial killer, he can't help himself, you know, but obviously, like, he stop that, so he doesn't need the trophies anymore. And so I love, but like in that scene, like the knife that he was about to do to get the blood slab and everything, it's like, all right, it disappears. He's like, fine, I won't do that. And when the time came, it's like, okay, so what did you do? And he was like, fine, I won't tell Harrison that I killed. I love that he like stabs Wiggles, and he's like, fine, I won't tell Harrison that I killed him. It's like, and I let him go. I scared him so bad. It's like, cool. He's like, oh, you're kind of like Batman, huh? He's like, yeah, more like what was it, like a Dark Defender or something like that. And it's like, yeah, and like Harrison really enjoyed it. Like, it's like, wow, he's like, I mean, almost getting killed by Kurt. Now this is like, it's a lot. It's like, yeah. And it's like, so you think Kurt will come after? It's like, nah, he's like 500 miles away by now. It's like, okay, cool. And I'm like, I was like, honestly, it is sweet, because the episode is titled, I think, The Family Business, and I'm like, I love how that all comes circling back around like that. It's beautiful that Dexter gets to, like I said, be open with him. And at the same time, we cut back to Angela, still processing, still trying to figure things out, because she is connecting Dexter to the Bay Harbor Butcher, but she's not sure. Just like Dexter with the code has to be 100% sure before she pulls the trigger on this, she wants to make sure she's 100% sure, so that's definitely going to be interesting as that, you know, plays out over the course of the episode, and obviously what that means for the future, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But I love that when Harrison wakes up, Dexter's got him gifts and everything, and it's just like it's that complicated and twisted thing of just like, oh, here's present. He's like, oh, cool, you got me this. Oh, that's awesome, Dad. Even got him a rifle and everything. It's like, oh, let's go test it out. He's like, wow, you're a better shot than me. Like, I've never been good with the guns. Because he also says, like, Christian's like, oh, have you ever used guns before? He's like, no, like, it's too loud, messy. But, it's, you know, he's like, yeah, just I've never actually been good with them, but shows that Harrison's a better shot, which I'm like, I wonder, is that foreshadowing something which we'll, you know, kind of get to later on. But, yeah, he's a pretty good shot. But also the final gift was a Christmas sweater. So they go over to Angela and Audrey's. And even Audrey notices. She's like, wow, you seem like happy. He's like, yeah, I learned how to kind of properly deal with my anger. So it's like, yeah. And you can tell Dexter and Harrison are like much happier. And it's just like, oh, it's all good. They're joking, handing out presents. Because once again, Angela's not sure. She's just overthinking things. But she's, you know, kind of just keeping everything pretty casual with Dexter, like everything's okay, and it's like, oh, it's super cute. And they're joking and laughing, and Dexter gives her Angela like some like when he gave her that book, I was like, oh, is that a joke present? You're gonna bring out your real present? It's like, oh no, that's that. And it's like, oh, I love Audrey being like, oh, super romantic, Jim. It's like, yeah. It's like, oh, we're gonna have to get you a Christmas sweater. He was like, I got this one. I think this is enough, you know. So it's a cute moment, and then there was a knock at the ring at the door, and I'm like, who is? I was like, it's going to be Kurt, isn't it? It's like, but he didn't know that Dexter and Harrison were going to be there, and then it's like them locking eyes. Oh, Jimbo, didn't know you and Harrison were going to be there, and it's like, yeah, and it's just this awkward thing, and it's like, yeah, my boy, I really would have missed him if something happened to him. I even love Kurt being a cocky bastard as he looks at Harrison. It's like, oh, see you around, and he kind of points it and goes with the gun hands. I was like, oh, you sly bastard, doing that out in the open. It kind of reminds me of like when Trinity confronted Dexter. It's like when he shows up at Miami Metro, and he looks at Dexter and he sees his name tag, Dexter Morgan. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit. It's like, oh man. Well, to be fair, Dexter's had those run-ins before me. Hell, even in the final season, the whole Daniel situation was very reminiscent of that. But it's like, cool. All right, me and Harrison, we have to go. And Audrey was like, oh, that was weird, wasn't it? But Angela's like, well, you know, this is their first, like, Christmas together. So he's just trying to spend as much time as possible. So, but obviously, Dexter kind of gives Harrison the lay of the lands of just like, what do? We have to like get absolute proof. So we're going to check things out and try and find out where he, you know, find the proof like I did with Wiggles. And I think it's so interesting because like, once again, just kind of Dexter in the slightly more advanced age is like, right, he's got Harrison to help him, like, granted that drone that Kurt gave him. It's like, oh, the gift that keeps on giving. It's like, now we don't actually have to physically go into the property. We can just like manually, well, we can do this from far away. But, obviously, Harrison has questions about the whole Wiggles thing. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, but that doesn't seem like justice, just like capturing him, kidnapping him, and scaring him. It's like, this doesn't seem like justice. Kind of like, is that really just like the end of it? And Dexter's like, he looks at Deb, and Deb's kind of giving him the head like, no, don't. He's like, yep, I mean, it's a deterrent because, you know, because neither one of them was expecting Kurt to actually still be here. But I love that he talks to Dexter about like, yeah, you were right about the Ethan thing. And I loved his explanation for it too. He's like, yeah, I had this urge. Like, he's like, I even planned it all out. And that's the sad thing is too, because Ethan was a friend for him, but at the same time, it was a situation of, at the end of the day, it's like, maybe on some level, I orchestrated everything so I could be a hero. I love that he was even willing to admit, like, the complications of like, yeah, it wasn't just like my urges, my dart passenger. It was also like, I wanted to be a hero too. I liked that was kind of mixed into it. And so he also talks about when he was 12 years old, he dreamed about finding the Trinity killer and making him pay. It's like, yeah, you know that he disappeared. It's like, yeah, I know, son. And it's like, right, not letting him know that like you killed the Trinity killer. But the fact is that he dreamed of finding the Trinity killer and killing him with his blade, just like Trinity did to Rita. That also had that conversation too about being institutionalized and stuff like that, because it's like, right, Dexter didn't really have anyone he could talk to about it. And even Harrison didn't really feel like he had anyone he could talk to about all of this either. Like, you know, you're scared because you never know how people are going to react. But now it's like, once again, Dexter hasn't had anyone he can talk to about this for a long time. That wasn't in his head, that being Deb. Because the last person he was able to talk to about this is also dead, Evelyn, because she helped forge him into what he is. But also Harrison didn't have anyone. I mean, because he didn't know he could talk to Hannah about it to some extent, because Hannah had her own things. But once again, Hannah was her own category, like Dexter's in his own league too. So like, once again, she was okay with him being the serial killer that he was. It wasn't just like, they kind of bonded and grew through the darkness in each other, but the fact is, it wasn't like she was all copacetic with it. Even she was kind of like, all right, you do what you got to do, but it's just like, she wasn't all for it like he was, essentially, you know? But it's like, yeah, after all this time, like, really being able to fully be open and embrace that with somebody, it's good on both ends for them. Like I said, it's like a sweet, beautiful father bonding moment. It's like, it's a Christmas episode of father-son bonding. And then on top of that, you deal with the fact that it's like, there's death and blood and murder involved. So it's just, I like that. Like, if you just took out the context of what Dexter is, it'll be a lot of sweetness to this episode, but it wouldn't be Dexter if it didn't have those Dexter elements. So, but it's like, right, we're going to wait till the dead of night to come here and check the place out because they found out where he might be keeping the bodies. And he calls Angela and was like, yo, me and Harrison, we're going to check out the blood moon, so we're probably going to miss dinner. She's like, yeah, it's fine, because, once again, she's also trying to contact Molly. I didn't think of anything at the time, but the moment she couldn't contact Molly, I was like, it wasn't till later on, I was like, you couldn't get in contact with her, and this is probably why. But, like, staying on Angela for a bit, her hearing about, it's like, right, the bad guy killer, the serial killer of people who fall between the cracks and everything. Because obviously, like, Molly had figured that maybe there was something more to it, that maybe, just maybe, they were still out there. And Audrey's like, oh, yeah, the bad guy killer. It's like, what do you think about that? It's like, well, I'm just glad, like, nothing like that happens here. And Angela's just kind of like, yeah, I guess, huh? So, like, we don't have anything like that. Well, truth be told, you had your own serial killer at your doorstep. Granted, apparently, we can honestly say Kurt's not the prolific killer that Dexter is. Because, yes, Kurt's got some bodies racked up over the years, but I don't think it's nearly as much as Dexter. But I could be wrong. I mean, he's been at it for 25 years. Like, I mean, we've seen in the time frame of the show, he got, 3-ish victims? Like 3-4 of that nature. Because you also had to add one more because of, Molly, which we'll get to in a second. But, I love that Dexter and I should also note, I think it's so interesting that, like, Harrison has a lot of, like, Deb-isms in this episode, which I should also note, too. He gave Dexter a hand-drawn picture of Deb. He was like, yeah, like, this is how I remember her. And Dexter was like, thank you. I was like, that's really sweet. I would have loved to know what Deb had to say about that or something like that. But regardless, but like, he had a lot of Deb-isms this episode, Harrison, when he's like, good, the fucker's not home. Like, the fact he's saying, I'm like, that's something Deb would say. And even later on, motherfucker needs to die. I'm like, cussing up a storm, like, just like that boom punctuation, almost needlessly cussing. It feels so Deb, It's like, I guess some of that, because he even remembers, like, her swearing a lot is something he remembers the most about Deb, even though he was so young. But I love that, like, all right, cool, we're breaking in here, and it's like, oh, can you teach me how to pick locks like that? He's like, yeah, sure, son. He's like, oh, God, my son's asking me. I even love earlier on, too, I'm skipping around, I'm like, I do apologize, he was like, okay, ask me what we gotta do something about it. Ask me what the plan is. Ask if you can help. The fact is, he wanted Harrison to ask for help. He's like, ooh, I want you to be a part of this, son. Please, son. Please tell me you want to do this. And it could be a father-son bonding moment. Oh, and he feels that in that moment then, and now this too. But it's like, oh, wait, what's that? And it's like, oh, it's a camera. Oh, looks like it's set up to go off. But it's like, don't worry. Like, the fact is, we want Kurt to know all his secrets are out. So Dexter intentionally steps on it. Because truth be told, it's like, I know what you are, and I fully know what you are, but now I know where your secrets are. But also, because Dexter already had it in his head, like, oh, I'm not going to keep up this charade forever. The plan is, I'm going to kill Kurt. Like, that way I'm fine with him knowing. Because I love, like, before they even went there, Deb was like, don't do this, like, find another way. It's like, no, Harry did what he did to me. And it's like, yeah, but he should have found another way. Institutionalized therapy. Jail would have been a better option. And he grabs the phrase, it's like, jail really would have been a better option? No, it wouldn't have. The fact of the matter is, Harrison's got my dark passenger. This is the only way. And she's like, and you're loving it. That's the thing of like, are you really trying to do what's best for Harrison? Are you really trying to quell his urges? Or are you just wanting him to lean into it because that way you don't feel so alone in the world? Because everyone that you felt some kindredness with on that level is gone. And to have this special connection with your son, yes, you didn't want this for him, but once again, it's like, well, he is this way now, so why not kind of dive deeper into it? Why not kind of accept that as part of it? But so but the moment they got deeper into place, and I was like, the moment we saw the boxes from the side, I was like, wait, is he putting them up? Like, are those boxes? I was like, are they like dolls to him? And it's like, yeah, they are. He keeps, because I was wondering like why he, like, the one he shot in that eye, like why it bothered him so much, because the wound is supposed to be in a place that's coverable. I mean, once again, it's recreating his first kill, just like all of them, but it's also a situation of like, he wants to, pristine them like they're dolls. And it's just like, oh, because he kind of talks about it later on, but like, these are runaways and what they would have done with their lives. I'm like, I'm saving them. The fact is that they are kind of preserved. I'm saving them in this almost like pure form because I'm saving them from going back out on the streets and stuff like that life. He justifies it by saving them. But the moment they got down there, I was like, oh, Molly's going to be one of them, isn't she? And she's going to be at the end. I was like, damn, dude, that sucks. He got Molly. We knew he was targeting her, but the last time we saw her was, I believe it was episode 7 when she was talking to Angela about like the whole thing about, oh yeah, Jim kind of came to help me. I think that was in fact like the last time we saw her, and it's just like, damn, it's like, when did he get a chance to get her? Because I was about to say, he didn't have the opportunity to do his normal thing, so he must have just like waited at an opportune moment when she wasn't prepared and gunned her down, or I don't see her going to confront Kurt, because she said she had a bad feeling, so she definitely wasn't going after him. But it also was, Molly was who she was. She wasn't really big into letting stuff go, so it sucks that it all plays out like that. It's just kind of a shame. And that's when Harrison was saying, like, right. And he turns to his dad, you killed Wiggles, didn't you? And he was like, and Dad was holding on to him, was like, please, don't. And he was like, yes, I did. He was like, along with Trinity, for what he did to your mom. Which I'm like, I love that, the revisionist history, because let's not forget, you didn't, because I love that he's turning it like that, because he wants to, because because the whole conversation about, vigilante shit. It's like, once again, we don't get caught because, we can't turn Kurt in because it's like, we'd have to admit while we were in the property and everything. It's like, right, typical vigilante stuff. But the fact is, he revised it like that to try and smooth things over even more with Harrison by making it sound like, oh, like I did this for your mom. It's like, no, you didn't know Rita was dead yet. You didn't know Rita, that was Trinity's last middle finger to you, which Kurt kind of gets his own middle finger off before he goes too. So it's, I think there's a lot of parallels they're trying to draw between Trinity and, once again, you got John Lithgow and you got like Clancy Brown. It's like these well-established like actors. So it's like there is a thematic like, oh, like they're doing it on purpose. That's why I'm like, I shouldn't have been too surprised that they made Kurt the serial killer, because it's not like you're going to throw Clancy Brown in it's just to just play casual in a show like Dexter. It's like, nah, coming in like I said, especially because I mean, and maybe that's just my opinion. I feel like most people, I think season 4 was their favorite season. The showrunner of Dexter, that was his final season, if I remember correctly, was season 4. So it's almost interesting, like, to pick up thematically and theming wise from the last season that the showrunner did, because he's also the one show running this. So I think that's why they're like, why it's kind of designed the way it is too in that regard. But yeah. So Dexter sets up his whole set, and it's like, oh, what's with all the plastic? It's like, oh, no blood, no nothing. It's like, right, part of the code, right? Don't get caught. It's like, bingo. So, it's like, all right, Well, that's after they knocked out Kurt. Because I love that Kurt went to the house and he sets, like, he's put all that gas on it just to burn it down. And he's got his gun ready. I was like, wait, do you think they're inside? I was like, wait, you didn't bother looking? I'm like, I get it, but it's like, the fact is you immediately came here. I guess he's like, oh, it's the middle of the night. They're most likely asleep. I'm like, but the fact is you didn't even do it. I guess it's like, if you did any due diligence, at least poke around a little bit. But I guess like, the more time you spend not doing it, poking around, more likely you're going to get caught. You won't be able to do what you want to do. Because the fact is he had his rifle and everything ready. I'm assuming he was going to make Dexter and Harrison potentially dolls too. I don't know. Well, definitely wouldn't have done that. So he didn't care how they would have died because this was about settling a score. So I don't know if it would have just been about killing Harrison. I think it would have been about killing Dexter too, because he knows Dexter would have come after him. But because he also didn't know who he was messing with. He knew that Dexter killed Matt, but he didn't know the extent of who he was dealing with. But yeah, by the time he got back ready to run, I love a once again a Debism. Hey fucko is what Harrison said, and it kind of just the fake shot, and Dexter came in and knocked him out. Which, speaking of that, Angela did like look more into some of the bodies and compared the wounds to like Miles and the other guy that like apparently OD'd. So it's like, yeah, she's piecing that together. When the time came, it's like, right, and Dexter's like, don't even try and claim that this was about your dad. And it's like, right, you did all this. He was like, once again, trying to say like, oh, I saved these women. Like, but no matter what I gave them, they always wanted to go out. That's the effed up thing. Cause he's like, I'm saving these women, but they didn't want to accept, they wanted to leave. Like, the fact is I was giving them everything, but they were going to go back out to the filthiness that is this world and what that would have done for them. I saved them in the long run. It's like, yeah, in his twisted mind, he thinks he's a savior, but I love that Dexter's like, no, it wasn't about that for you, it's power. And the moment he's going into this conversation, I'm like, is it? And you can tell Harrison's drawing the same parallels too, because he's like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, it sounds like you're talking about yourself, Dad, because he's like, no, you get off from the power, the terror that's in them and stuff like that. And then it's like, oh, he's like, then why'd you try and kill me? It's like, oh, your dad didn't tell you? Oh, Jimbo. He's like, I tried to kill you because he killed my son, so try to do he's like, it was nothing personal, which I love that, I forgot about Home Dude, when Dexter was excited to slice his body up earlier, guy from last episode that tried to kill him, that it's like, oh yeah, he was so happy, he was talking to Deb and stuff about like everything, because he was so happy. He's like, my son, we're in a good place again. But it's like, oh, Matt killed people on a boat. He's like, Kurt's like, wait a minute, that's your justification? Some stupid reason, like some code? And that's the thing. It's a flimsy, it adds, it makes you, don't seem like you're some good guy in the long run. It's like, you are a bad guy. You are still killing people. And I like that. That, especially, the complicated thing is, like, you're always in that borderline area of like, I don't know whether to like you're an anti-hero, but it's also like, I don't know. Because it's not like you do it for the all. Like, the Punisher kind of does what he does just because he's a very angry person. Dexter does what he does because he gets off on it. It's to satiate some urge in him. Maybe the same argument could be made for the Punisher. I've never read like Punisher comics. My only experience is the little bit I remember from the movie and the 2 seasons on Netflix. So, but it's like, other motivators drove him. Dexter kind of does it because he kind of gets off on it. Like, it's to quell his own urges, but it's also because he has said urges. So it is still kind of like I like that. I think it is interesting that Kurt's like, really? Something flimsy like that is the reason why you kill people? Like, really? Which I'm like, I love that Kurt saying that. I'm like, it's not like your reason's any better. Like, I guess it's the whole point of like, right, serial killers will justify just killers in general will always justify what they do. They'll be like, oh, like, I'm doing a necessary good. Especially when Harrison asked, he was like, so how many times have you done this? He was like, quite a few times. How many? He's like, and Dexter's thinking, so go big or go home. In the hundreds. He's like, holy shit. It's like, yeah. It kind of, it's a lot to wrap your head around because he's been doing this for a long time, but it's like, that's kind of wild to think about that. But also at the same time, he was like, so that means you've saved like thousands of innocent lives. He's like, yeah, Dexter's never thought about that. Maybe to some extent, but once again, it's about him getting off, him getting his, while also making the world a safer place in the long run, sure. But it's just like, once again, it's splitting hairs type of thing. It's just like, you can, not saying, you can sit on both sides of it, or just kind of sit in the middle of like, it kind of makes you feel bad that you support Dexter, because you shouldn't. You shouldn't kind of want him to get away with it, because at the end of the day, he is a bad guy. He's breaking the law. He's murdering people. Yes, these are people falling in, but obviously, like, no one co-signed what he did. Obviously, Dokes wasn't like, hey, like, you know, what happened to you, you know. Also, Deb didn't co-sign what you did. She was actually happy when you kind of turned over a new leaf, but still. So, Dexter does what he does, and Harrison is watching, and I love the moment, like, Harrison's backing up because the blood tripping down, and, like, because Dexter said, like, the first time was going to be a lot, and it triggered, like, him thinking about Rita and the blood pooling out of the pool. And just when it was about to touch his shoe, because I was like, oh, there's going to be some traces of blood on his shoe. Now, what we saw, it didn't seem like his foot touched it at all, because he was probably thinking, like, don't get any blood on your shoe. But I was like, there's probably going to be the smallest amount of blood. And so he's like, no, I'm going to go and get some fresh air like you suggested. And because Dexter was like, yeah, I don't know if we don't get that too often, like the graphicness of like him just cutting the limbs and hearing the flesh cutting, like, because usually more, I think maybe early days they focused on it a little bit, but later seasons it was already done. You never got to see the sawing and stuff like that, and just it's like hearing the flesh and everything. Even I was like, that's a little much, because obviously you show the angle of like Kurt, but like his left arm's already cut off or in the process of being cut off. It's like, oh, I like to cut them up into 9 pieces depending on how big they are. Once again, Dexter's having the most casual conversation, and it's like, yeah, he's kind of trying to ease Harrison into it, and asking Harrison like, oh, why don't you get these body parts, and so put them in the back of the RV, and Dexter's like, they go burn the body, and it's like, right, so what if they notice Kurt's missing? It's like, well, the fact of the matter is he already did the best for us. Like, he got, try to take the money and run. It's like, oh, you knew he'd run. It's like, yeah, like people like Kurt, like him, always do. So him covering his tracks like this isn't going to be that big of a deal. So once the time comes, like, they'll just think he ran away, and it's like, right. So not getting caught. It's like, oh, easy peasy. All right, son, let's go back. Oh crap, our house was burnt down. Once again, one last middle finger from Kurt. It's like, where were you? Oh, the blow moon. Lost track of my phone and stuff like that. I had it turned off, try to be present with Harrison. And it's like, and then Audrey being like, Mom, they're going to be staying with us, right? You're like, and Angela's like, what? They are? And she's just like, yikes. Especially considering, all Angela's kind of dealing with right now. And Dexter's like, no, we can stay in it. And it's like, no, you're staying with us. And I love when they pull up, Audrey's like, oh, you guys must be hungry. And then like both Dexter and Harrison saying, yep. And they both look at each other and kind of laugh. I'm like, dude, I love, it's cute and it's sweet in a psychotic way. I love it. And so, yeah, let's go in for breakfast and stuff. Angela's still like, all right, processing, dealing with everything. And then she gets a note, and it's like, Jim Lindsay killed Matt Caldwell, and then there's a screw. It's like, oh yeah, once again, that one you thought burning your house down was it? No. Calling you out for what you did is Kurt's last middle finger to you. I love it. And now Audrey's looking at Dexter. It's like, oh cool, you got him in your home and everything. So this is where we are. Things are going to be interesting. Now earlier I referenced like Harrison being a good shot. I'm like, is that going to come back around in this moment? Well, because like the thing is, what he's going to do? Like, they have their code. They don't kill innocent people. But this is about not getting caught. So is Dexter going to try and kill Angela? What about Harrison? Will he do it to protect his father? But it's like, right, this is your girlfriend. Because also, like, Dexter and her had that conversation. He's like, oh, eventually we're going to have to have that conversation about if our kids get together. And it's like, yeah, that's always that interesting thing of like, oh, yeah, the parents are dating and then the kids date too. To me, that's always like, I don't know. Because that's come up a few times in Riverdale, then I'm like, that's a little weird in certain regards. And I'm like, how do you handle that? Like, that's so weird. I don't know. I just think it's kind of even if the parents aren't together, even if they were together, that's still, I don't know. That's always a thing, but it's like, yeah, so where do we go from here? Because Angela doesn't have any proof, but someone did gave her the titanium screw, so that's at least some evidence. So having some idea of who Dexter is, potentially being the Bay Harbor Butcher, what are you going to do? Like, yeah, he kills bad guys, and all of a sudden Kurt's disappeared too. A lot of bad people disappeared in Miami, where the Bay Harbor Butcher was, and now Dexter's here, and all of a sudden people are disappearing. I don't know. So that's going to be interesting. The next episode is the season finale or finale. I haven't looked into it too much because I don't want to know until we get to the episode, until I see how this season wraps up, whether or not, because I know there's been talks about whether or not I don't know if it's been renewed already, but I know there's been talks about a potential season 2, and you could see that being the case, but this might be a one and done. This was set up initially as a limited series, so I don't know if that's still going to be, and even limited series can eventually become full-blown series, but still. I'm curious to see what happens. I'm going to avoid all previews like the plague because I don't want an inkling of what's going to go down in this next episode. Because I'm just so curious, like, how everyone's going to play this out. Like, because nobody wants to kill Angela because she's not a bad person. She's just a good person, a good cop doing her job. Because she actually looked into Molly and found out, like, got Molly's safe open and her recording device and stuff were there. It's like, no, she wouldn't leave without it, so she knows there's something more. Eventually, when they look into the Kurt stuff and find everything, they will eventually find Molly's body. But once they can't find Kurt, then Angela's going to start piecing it together that Dexter's kind of done his work. So I don't see this having, like, not everyone's going to walk away from this happy, is what I'm saying. It's going to get complicated next episode, I'm sure, and I'm just interested to see how it all plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.